But yeah, I've written some other short stories too, which have been published in literary journals in the West Indies, down in the West Indies. And I have one that's I've written recently that's coming out soon, called Happy Hour. So just to give you a general sense of what I'm writing like now and what the subject matter continues to be like. So this is called Happy Hour. It is said that a bar is only as good as its bartender, and that a hotel is only as good as its bar. Henry Drake's was that bartender, and Palm Bay was that hotel. Barbados is an island that sits apart from the rest of the leewards, and except for the dwindling sugarcane harvest, there's little to recommend the old British colony but sun, sea, and a smiling people. Henry, my boy, it's happy hour. Yes, Mr. Flint, that is true, what you would like. Pina colada for the wife and rum punch for the old boy. Flint's wife smiled. Her husband always ordered for her and she never once objected. Everyone was happy. Henry, seeing you when we walked in this afternoon made my day. You've been here every year we've come down. Must be 18 years now, I think. At first Henry pretended to know them, but at some point the name Flint popped into his head. About the same time Flint's wife began to speak and her husband cut her off. How long have you worked here? Mr. Flint, long as this place been standing. Oh my, and the hotel's so old, said Flint's wife, managed to get a few words in. Another couple sat at the bar, and shortly after 2 men joined them. Flint addressed the group as if he worked at the hotel. This is Henry, the best bartender in Barbados, perhaps the world. He's got the best job in the world, that's for sure. Henry smiled as he always did, and the other patrons soon addressed him as Henry, just as Flint did. As he mixed the drinks, one of the men spoke. Henry, how do you get a job like this? I'd like to apply. Everyone laughed. Henry smiled too, but as he smiled, he thought of the small amount of money he was paid to lubricate pink, sunburnt strangers, of the little chattel house he shared with his wife for 30 years, of the small piece of land she worked, of the meager proceeds from that work that she sold in the market, and finally he thought of the old Vauxhall that daily threatened to quit on the back roads of St. Thomas. Mister, you sure you would want this job? You got to stay sober. The man's right, Jimmy, you drink all the profit. Patrons broke into laughter once again as Henry distributed cocktails and beer. He hadn't seen these guests before, but they were soon introduced to him. They acted as if they'd known him for years, and that's the way it always was. Every week or 2 weeks, a new set of people arrived, and to all of them he was Henry the bartender, the mixer of their drinks, the one person always ready to listen, the one Barbadian they felt they knew. Henry was the island, and the island was Henry. None of them knew him as Henry Drake's, and none of them ever bothered to ask. The evening shift ended. Between taking orders and mixing drinks, he spent the last 30 minutes trying to tidy up. The job was becoming more tiring with every passing day. Drake's boy, you're looking tired. Blakey, I feelin' it, that true. Blakey was Billy Blake, the evening bartender. You get some sleep, you hear, and say hello to Mabel. No sooner had Blake stepped behind the bar than the orders started coming and the blender began to whirl. Henry walked across the one-way street outside the hotel and fumbled with his keys before opening the driver's side door of the old beast. As he turned the key in the ignition and gently pumped the accelerator, the engine turned over but refused to start. After about 5 minutes of rising frustration, the damn thing caught, spewing a black cloud of exhaust out the back. The traffic was bad on the main road, so he followed the coast road and contemplated the hot meal his wife Mabel would be fixing. The myriad greens and blues of the ocean and the churning surf passed by unnoticed. The sea had always been there and always would, just like the unforgiving rock at this tiny island. It was dark when he pulled into the narrow lane beside his home. The place was small, little more than 2 rooms, but they'd raised a family there and it was their home. The rattling of pots and pans came from the kitchen as he stepped inside the door and quietly removed his shoes. He came up behind his wife and held her by her waist. She spun around. Henry, man, stop that. I almost dropped this. The anger on her face hurt him and he backed away. Her frown softened into a tiny smile. She put the pot on the counter and held out her arms. Come, you silly man. She held him. You think you're some young yam? That what you think? But darling, you're looking really tired. Here. She took him to the tiny circular table and pulled out a chair. Sit yourself down. She returned to the kitchen. Your favorite tonight, steamed flying fish with rice and peas. She was right, that was his favorite meal, especially the way Mabel prepared it. She brought him a glass of fresh-made lemonade, and it tasted better than any drink he'd mixed the whole day at Palm Bay. Clinton dropping by, or so he say. Woman, you just spoil my dinner. Henry, he's your son, you know, and he's yours too, said Henry in response. Look, darling, the boys sound happy. You just want to come by is all. Okay, but I having dinner, and when I having dinner, and ain't nobody getting in the way of that. As he spoke, strains of rap and dub filled the air outside, and the car door slammed shut. Before Henry could turn around, a loud rapping shook the louvers of the front door. Mabel rushed by, and soon filling the open door was the tall figure of their only son, Clinton. Beyond the young man on the road outside, Henry could see the gleaming hood of a silver Mercedes-Benz. Mommy! The boy hugged his mother as he set down a large shopping bag. Henry remained sitting. Daddy, evening, how you going? Hungry, if you want to know. Mabel, how did dinner going? Yeah, sorry for that business, you know. Henry shook his head. If his son wanted to refer to what he did to acquire money as business, that was up to him, but Henry was having no part of it. Clinton followed his mother into the kitchen. Henry sat at the table, sipping his drink, getting an odd bit of their conversation. Mommy, look at this. Wait, why that lovely, but the money. It for you, it ain't no money, you like it? But it get dirty, hold it here. A few moments passed, Henry couldn't take it anymore. He roughly pushed the chair back and stood in the kitchen doorway. His wife was holding a new dress close to her chest. Where the dinner? Dear soon, look at what Clinton bring. I ain't want to look at nothing he bring. Mabel tilted her head, frowning as if pleading with her husband. The boy's eyes became small and his face hardened. Henry, please, the boy trying. Woman, he ain't trying hard enough. Mommy, no matter what I do, it ain't never enough for this man, never enough. Yes, that true, 'cause this man, Henry patted his chest hard, 'cause this man ain't never do nothing he's ashamed of. Nothing, you hear. Wait. What you trying to say? Say it, go on, say it. Henry and his son were standing close now, too close for Mabel. She tried to get between them. Woman, get back, get back. They stepped out into the main room near the table. You want me to say it, do you? To say that you a man? You think 'cause you get babies from all sort of women, that you can sell your smoke to tourists, that you a man? You ain't no man at all. Henry loudly sucked air disdainfully between his teeth. He took the shopping bag from his wife's hand and tossed it at his son. His son laughed. All right, I go on. Mommy, these for you, no matter what he say. He set the bag down and grinned at his father. So you as a man? You ain't no man, you're a coward. Yes, you are, coward. All these years you're smiling at a white man. Yes, sir, this, yes, sir, that. And you smile so sweet. You call that a man? You're the great bartender at Palm Bay, smiling and serving drinks, kissing tourist ass. Yes, that a man, a real man. As he walked through the door, he looked back. Yes, you're right. I sell a little weed to tourists. And when I do, I smile too, just like you. So you see, Daddy, you and I ain't so different. It's just that you get paid so little for a life. Silver Benz threw a cloud of dust into the night air. A silence descended over the house. Without exchanging a word, Mabel returned to the kitchen. She kept her eyes on the floor, unable to look at her husband. As muted sounds came from the kitchen, Henry walked outside and sat on the back porch. Fireflies flickered intermittently, describing a dotted path through the tamarind trees as a cool December breeze cooled the back of his neck. From the house he heard, "Henry, come dear, dinner out, come." He didn't move but remained staring at the gray fields of flowing sugarcane. He heard tiny footsteps from behind. "Henry, you ain't want your dinner?" He shook his head. She sat beside him, and for a few moments they didn't speak. Mabel glanced at him, but he looked away. She placed her hands on his shoulders. He fought back tears. She rocked him back and forth. Emotions surged over his body, and she held him until the waves of sadness passed. Clinton was very wrong to say what he say. No, Mabel, the boy right, he right. I ain't no man, he right. She turned him to face her. Though her eyes glistened, she held him so tight that it hurt. No, you're wrong. He ain't right. Now you listen to me. You're more a man than any of them. You hear me? More than any of them. Clinton's so wrong, so wrong. In this little house, you raise a family. In this little house. She slammed her fist against the wood siding. Every day you go into that hotel, and you ain't once complained. Not once. And you've been true to me. He smiled up at her. Yes, I know you've been. And you did all that for your family. All that. And I ain't want no other man. None of them. You're a real man to me. She kissed his forehead and he hugged her tight. They laughed through their tears as they almost fell off the porch. Man, come. I need something from my man. Come. She took him by the hand and led him into the bedroom. By the time they'd finished, they were both glowing with sweat. And Mabel's hair was matted against her forehead, and her curls fell over her shoulders in wet strands, just as they did when they were young. She looked down at him as Henry lay back in the bed. Every muscle in his body had relaxed into a state of happiness. Again? He looked at her with a mixture of shock and fear. Mabel jabbed him and laughed. I only kid him. I warming up the dinner. As she dressed, she winked at him. You ain't lost nothing, boy. The day was like most days in Barbados, hot and sunny. A clear blue sky stretched from one horizon to the other, and the sounds of birds chirping could be heard over the gentle surf as the first waves of tourists began to hit the beach. Henry was at his station once more. He cut thin slices of limes and arranged the grated nutmeg and bottles of bitters in the same order he'd always done. Old man Flint approached. Henry, my man, good to see you looking so happy. Yes, Mr. Flint, you got to be happy. I'll start the day with a rum punch, please. Henry set to work on his best drink and set aside 2 glasses. He spread the nutmeg on top and slipped in the maraschino cherries before placing both drinks on the bar. The old man protested. But Henry, happy hour isn't until 4. Yes, I know, Mr. Flint, but you and I know that it's always happy hour down here.